Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really wonderful guest today. Her name is Julie Claire. She's a spiritual guide, teacher, mentor, energy healer, etc. I'm so excited to have her here. Thank you for being here today, Julie.
Yay. Hi. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad that you're here too. And why don't you take a moment to just expand on what it is you offer and a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Well, what I offer is spiritual mentorship in a nutshell. It can't be simpler than that. It's spiritual mentorship I only work with small groups and mostly only one-on-one. And it's just slowly go through the process of decluttering the energy field, decluttering the mind, decluttering the body so that the soul can come in more and more. In a nutshell, that's what it comes down to. And then, how do I go about it? There's a whole bunch of different ways, but at the end of the day, it's always about helping my students develop more and more energetic discernment so they can tell the difference. Energetic discernment, tell the difference between the voice of their ego, the voice of their wounded child, the voice of an internalized authority figure that hurt them. Just like the more you can discern all these different voices, the more you can come to the place where there's choice of what you're going to give your power over to. So in many ways, it's like, this is about empowerment, but not in the sense of like, I'm a strong woman, empower, fuck you guys. It's not like that. It's about coming back to yourself and reclaiming ownership and sovereignty of your vessel. So in order to have soul embodiment, we need to fine tune and develop the energetic discernment so much that we become really, really good at knowing how to love and welcome and work with whatever energies show up in us.
That's really beautiful. I love that on so many different levels, because I think it's like either we're sleepwalking and we're completely unaware that we even have a soul and that we're, a spiritual being having a human experience. Like we're totally unaware, or we're just starting to become aware, but there's so many things that are kind of blocking us from really connecting with that part of us, which has always been there. But then society conditions and programming and belief systems and all these things were handed to us. And so I love the discernment piece and the empowerment piece. It's interesting because that's a lot of what I do in my work. I'm a tarot reader and I love to use it for empowerment. And it's like, I love being able to tell them, you know more than you think you do, because most of the time they come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I already was thinking this. I already kind of knew this, but I wasn't sure. And reminding them, no, you are your own compass. And learning how to listen to what that feels like and teaching that. And then, especially all the different ways that you do that, which I can't wait to dive into. But I just love the main focus that you have, which is bringing people back to themselves on like that soul level. And so that's really, really cool. What I would love to ask next is, how did you find this work? So is this something that you've always been doing, or is this something that kind of found you and you were, pulled into this work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that unless you come from like a lineage of healers, like your dad was one and his granddad and their grandma and the whatever, and I don't know, unless you're coming from that kind of context, which is a very valid context, most of people that work in the field of energy healing are wounded healers, right? They are people that went through deep trauma as children, and in their process of healing and of doing all the work, you just get to a place when you rediscover what it's like to be at peace and to feel safe in yourself after doing the healing work. You're like, I want everyone to know this. There's nothing more natural than it's kind of like you found out a secret, and you're like, I got to get this out in the world, it's just, so it's like, there's like this deep need to go about it. But basically in a nutshell, I was a highly traumatized child. I grew up in a very traumatic environment, and I dissociated from my body. And I just had a really strong intellect, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go out in the world and do whatever I want. And just my body's got all this pain in it. So I'm just going to act like it doesn't exist, and I'm still going to use it to walk, but I'm not going to act, And then what happens when you actually do come back in the body and feel the pain and release and work with the trauma, and then you're like, oh my God. Okay. But you also know everything you did that didn't help, right? And that's what you want to share too.
Yeah, that's and it's an interesting is it's like so many people that I bring on have similar versions of that story is that, and like you said, I mean, there's only a very select few of guests that I've had who were already open to this work and introduced to this work from a young age. Like that just doesn't happen very often, being in that environment where they can like be creative and curious and there isn't a lot of trauma. Most of the time it's like society says this is what you're supposed to be, this is what you're supposed to believe, this is how you're supposed to act, and then we just go out into the world and try and fit into these boxes that were handed to us.
Something I want to say about that. You're asking, was I introduced to this? So at a certain point when I was 25, I was introduced to a master alchemist, and he just looked at me, he scanned my field, and he's like, your soul is crying. And he's like, it touches me so deeply. I want you to do an apprenticeship with me. And I was like a university student, summa cum laude, A plus, grade point average, and my master's degree, getting ready to be a university professor. And I was like, who's this guy? Who's, who invited him to the party? But my soul resonated so deeply with what he said that I knew I had to. But something I want to say about my childhood is that I've always had strong intuitive skills, but it was in such a dissociated version, right? So I would be going through trauma, such as sexual abuse or like big trauma, going through it. And there was two parts of me. There was the part of me overlooking the situation, like my soul, my intuition, letting me know what's going on, letting me know, okay, this is about to happen and it's not going to be easy, and this is what's going on in them. And this is the trauma they went through as a child. And this is this, and this is that. So I had all this information at a, quantum intuitive level while being a little child in a 6-year-old body and still going through the trauma. So that's been a recurring theme in my life. All these key moments of highly traumatic events that I always had this weird piece of understanding what's going on. Even if I didn't understand the terms, but not knowing how to make sure the body had that safety, right? So it's like it's dissociation, but it's like a dissociation between your intuition that's like, yo, girl, let me tell you what's about to go down here, and it's not your fault, and it's not about you, but you're still gonna go through it.
First of all, I'm so sorry that you experienced that, but also, that dissociation. I mean, I feel like it's a combination of like, it was protective of you and also probably gave you a perspective that you wouldn't have had access to if it wasn't already offered. And so, I mean, I don't know if that helped in the long run, but I mean, either way, that's horrible trauma. A lot of intuitives though go through something similar in the sense that a lot of the times we tend to know when something's off,
Mm-hmm.
and that was at least my experience being, an empath. I was also it's so funny. Like a lot of my childhood, I don't even really remember very well between certain
Yeah.
ages. I just don't recall, and it's like it's almost like this big gap in my memory, and I learned when I got older, like, oh, you're really good at dissociating, you're really good at like, basically not having to be present when I needed to, well, not when I needed to be, but when I had to protect myself. And so it's so interesting now coming full circle after I have done a lot of healing. I still get that way, but now it's more of a balance. It's more of a, okay, this is what's happening. And so I guess for me now, it's more of like a information download where I can stay at balance and center in the midst of it because now I'm grown up and I can emotionally regulate much better than I used to, all of those things. But I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people probably can relate to that on some level. And then I think part of what your work is finding helping people reconnect with that on a more balanced level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because just like the minute you say there's entire parts of my childhood I don't remember, that's real dissociation. We weren't there anymore, right? So this other thing we're talking about, which is what I agree that a lot of intuitives go through that. You're in a situation where you're going through a trauma, and at the same time, you understand what's going on. which is the strangest thing. Because like in true dissociation, you just get the F out of there. You know, your consciousness is gone. It's like I have pieces of my childhood like that. I'm like, okay, I don't know what happened between that part of the memory and that part of the memory, but clearly it was traumatic enough that I don't have access to it. And there are ways to access that, but it's you do it very softly and gently, and you get the person ready for that because it's literally stored in a different part of the brain than the rest of the where we access memory. But yeah, I think that's the reality of a lot of empaths. Another thing that empaths go through, which is what I did part of when I was in this abusive situation with an uncle, is that sometimes what the empath does is they leave their body and not just to go float above it. They leave their body to go into the body of the other person to try to understand what their perspective is. I think that sometimes leads to deeper trauma.
Yeah, it's like there's confusion around why they're doing what they're doing. And then I don't know if that could even make it confusing as far as like enmeshment or, kind of like, I mean, it's hard because one thing that I have learned in my spiritual journey is this compassion, even for those that have really hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's funny because I still struggle with that. On some level, it's like, okay, they're not as big of a monster as I thought they were because they're actually just human beings who are also traumatized and hurt and don't know how to deal with that traumatized. And they're just burying it underneath their behavior, and so I can like see that and it helps me have compassion. But then there's that like that fine line of but they still did it, and you know what I mean. So there's a lot of forgiveness work that can come around that. But um when you
Mm-hmm.
say that it's more traumatizing, is it more like an enmeshment standpoint?
Well, for me, what happened is I projected myself into his body, and then I saw what he was thinking about while he was doing the abuse. It had nothing to do with me. I wasn't even. That's weird stuff to realize. It's like, wow, I'm not even part of this abuse, even though he's doing it to me. He was reliving his childhood, his father beating him up, all his rage and anger against his mother that never protected him. And I just like that's kind of part of my intuitive skills. It's just like these like holographic downloads and in one shot, it's clear cognizance. In 1 second, I just understand the whole kaleidoscope of someone's life and why they did what they did. But like I didn't do it on purpose. But in that moment, I abandoned myself. Like I didn't mean to, it was this weird curiosity of like, well, okay, I'm stuck here anyways. I can't get out of this situation. I'm like 6, like, and how weird is it that you are even aware and able to have that discussion with yourself when you're 6? I don't, I don't know how that works, but that's always been part of my reality, understanding what's going on, even if I have to go through it. And the emotional part of me has to go through what they're going to go through. But something I want to say about what you just said, it's so important. This is a reality of most of us that have empathetic qualities and things like that. In a nutshell, it's like we think we need to love our abusers, or else what? Or else we're a bitch, or else we're an abuser too, or else we're, whatever comes after these 3 dots. And that is such an important thing to understand. You don't have to love your abusers. Forgiving abusers has nothing to do with them. The most important and the only thing that matters is for you to do your inner work of going to get that part of you that went through that and allowing that grief to be processed. Then and only then can there even be the idea of maybe forgiving that other person. But we've grown up in a world where it's like even 2 kids fighting, all of a sudden they're put together. Okay, forgive each other now. And they're not ready for that. They're fucking pissed off at each other. It's like, you're an asshole. I hate you, forgive him. Like, okay, I forgive you, oh, my God, if we could see what our inner children look like in these moments, they look like dragons that want to like fire, hunt at the other person and destroy them completely. So that's not fair. And that's another trauma that we have been put through. My version of that was if ever I would speak up about the mental illness in my family and that it was hurtful, it's hurtful. Like it hurts when someone rams into you because of something they're going through. The answer I was given was always the same. It's just, we're sick. with that face and that tone and that, and then you're just like, oh, I'm sorry. So then you feel bad for wanting to have boundaries. You feel bad for thinking you're allowed to speak up and say, hey, I'm not okay with that. That hurt. So it's like that whole loving the abusers and not knowing, oh my God, like that's a big chunk to work on. It's one of the first things I'll ever do with someone when I'm working with them. We're going to go find these resentments right away, because underneath that facade of I forgive my abusers is a pissed off little child that's like, what?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is something that society, I mean, even in a lot of family dynamics, they're just like, well, they're still your dad, or they're still your mom, or they're still your uncle, or whatever it is. Like, and that doesn't mean anything. Like for me, I've had to do a lot of work just to even get an out, like this much compassion for the people who've really hurt me. And I'm that compassion helps me understand where they're coming from and why they did what they did. And it makes me kind of like, it puts me in this position of, wow, I'm sorry that that they decided to make these decisions, but it was based off what they went through and that's how they handled it. So I mean that part is really helpful, but I'm a big advocate of boundaries. I'm a big advocate of, you don't need to have this person in your life or forgive them, right? Like, and like you said, forgiveness is for you to release. That's what it's really for. It's for you to release what you have been carrying, that this person doesn't even, it's not even impacting the person that hurt you, but it's impacting you because you're stuck carrying it. So I love that you mentioned that, because I do feel like that is something that has to come when you're ready, if you're ever ready.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Something I want to say, like, so there's the ego version of forgiveness, which is like, you're an idiot and you're wounded and you hurt me, but I forgive you. That's the ego version of forgiveness. We all know that one. It's like, you know, but I want to say something about that you just said. Forgiveness, we could consider forgiveness to be selfish in the sense that you're doing it for you. Refusing to forgive someone is, I love that expression, is drinking poison, thinking you're hurting them, but you're the one drinking it, right? So the thing, when you forgive, when true forgiveness happens, true release from your field of whatever you're carrying from them, it goes back to them. So don't think that you truly forgiving someone does not have an impact on them. And then again, you got to be careful, because then the ego is like, okay, so if I forgive them, then they're going to get all that shit they did to me back, and then they're going to have to process and work on it. No. It's so, spiritual ego is so tricky and so sneaky. But just understand, when you truly forgive something, the energy gets sent back. What they took from you, you get it back. And what you left and what they, you complete the energy. That energy that was enmeshed together, you unmesh it, which means you get yours back and you stop carrying what you're carrying from them. So that's a super important piece. Another way of saying it, if I use like more like spiritual Christian terms, it's not really my forte. Like, it's not that I don't believe in Jesus, but it's not that. But another way of looking at this is, what you're doing is, it's like, it'd be the equivalent of like Jesus saying, give them all back to me. Give them to me so that I will pose the final judgment on them. And then we don't understand what that means. We think he's going to be like, okay, you're an idiot, you're going to hell. You're okay, you're going to heaven. It's not even that. It's that everything you have made that was made out of non-love, you will fully face and see what it is. And either you're going to stay in hell about it with your guilt, or you're going to finally release that. So their work, the work of abusers and narcissists and pedophiles and whatever the hell they've done, on the other side of here, they have a huge process to go through. Because one of the things that happens also is that once we're on the other side, we get to feel we get to feel from the perspective of everyone that was involved what our actions did. That is enough. You know what I mean? We don't need to wish ill to anyone, because it's like, that's woo, woo. So imagine if you give it all back to them. That's more for them to process.
That's a perspective I haven't heard yet, but I really like that because that's honestly, I just haven't been able to find the words for it. That's what I believe because I'm not Christian either. I feel like my spiritual beliefs are just too broad to fit into any particular belief system, but I do believe that, like, for instance, I don't believe in hell. I think our hell or our heaven is based on what we do with our life and how we handle things we've done, things that, choices we've made, all of that. And so I 100% believe that when an abuser has to, well, they have to come to terms with it, and most of the time they're not willing to. And so I feel like that's like work that their spirit's gonna continue after they pass if they don't ever face it here while they're here. And so like when people are like, oh, well, someone should go to hell when they die because of everything they did, it's like, well, they're going to basically be in their own hell until they process this. Unfortunately, like that's their own, and I feel like, so there's so many different things that I could touch on that. Are you familiar with Donald Walsh?
Of course.
Yeah. So there's a children's book that talks about
The little
basically,
son,
yes,
yeah. That's so
that
cute.
one, I have to sit with it because it's this idea that, on some level, there was a choice that our souls made to experience what we experience. So, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it resonates so much, but you have to understand that, we're all souls that deserve love. We're all souls that deserve, you know, to be reconnected with ourselves and in our highest self, right? We all deserve that, but because of the choices we make, we're going to have to experience different things. And your example, um, have you ever heard of the movie called The Shack?
Of course. I
Okay,
love that
yeah.
movie. I love it.
Yes, that to me is like it explains perfectly like how like when you release your, and what they need to process and go through and how they have their own spiritual team and support, but they have to feel what they went through. They have to experience it. They have to own it. But that's not yours to carry. That's their journey. That's what they have to face. And
Yeah.
so when you're releasing it, I love that because you're one, you're sitting down that weight, right? And that pain and that trauma, but also you're understanding that on some level, eventually they're going to have to face it. But that's not for you to stress or worry about because that's for them. That's their thing. And so I like that idea of like that release and helping you understand that no, you're just because you're releasing it, it doesn't mean they're off the hook. It just means you're letting yourself off the hook, right?
It reminds me of Lovely Bones too. Remember that movie, Lovely
Yeah.
Bones? And like that little girl keeps telling her, don't like let God's gonna take care of this. And God ends up taking care of that pedophile. He just
Yeah.
slips off the thing and whatever, like, and then
Right.
and then you don't have the karma of having tried to to kill him, and.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, Lovely Bones also did it as well. I feel like if you for those that have not seen The Shack, like that movie, it takes it to that flip side. It really challenges you to think about unforgiveness and think about
Mm,
and what forgiveness means and
that's a
how to even consider getting to a place where you know what it looks like to forgive an abuser. And again, not everyone's there or even will be there, but that movie was just it's so funny because the first time I saw it, I wasn't on my spiritual journey yet, and it still had such a big impact because I'm a mom and my daughter at the time was about the age of the little girl in that movie. And then I rewatched it after I really dived into my spirituality, and it was like there's so many more takeaways the second time because I had a bigger understanding of what they were referring to.
it for me. It really sums up a movie like that. Sums up the the true frequency of ideally what Christianism would be. Like that deep understanding of what that is, that sacred trinity of the Holy Spirit, like the mother energy, the father energy, and the son, and like just like that whole trinity understanding, which we have all three of those in us. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a beautiful, beautiful movie.
So, I mean, so it sounds like you're not afraid to go deep into those, really murky areas in life that, a lot of us don't want to go to, but if we want to heal and get to the other side, we have to be willing to go there. So, with the work that you're doing, do you feel like you've found your purpose and what you're meant to be doing here as a human having, a spiritual experience?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, absolutely. If I look at my whole life, it's if I would use a term, I would use the term of it was a journey of evolutionary embodiment, which isn't a term that we hear a lot, but basically what it means is my whole journey has been about I had access to super high intellect, straight A student, professor, blah, blah. I had access to super high intuition, like downloads of information when I was 6 years old and being abused. And like, just like the intuition's always been there, but it wasn't grounded in my body. And my whole journey has been about grounding the intellect and the intuition in the body. And the way that happens is through processing trauma. You have to process the trauma out of your body. you have no choice, or else you're floating up on your head, or you're like trying to be a heart, but there's all this like stuff that's unresolved. And so, yeah, if I look at my whole life, it's brought me to that point. But when I was a university professor, my field of work in sociology was my goal was to understand how change happens. How does a society transition from one way of being to another? How does the psyche go from one thing to another? And then it's like the other thing never existed. Like it used to passion me so much. And I ended up finally realizing that my real passion was about how we do that inside of ourselves. And, studying it in society was just a fun way to do it. But basically, what I really wanted to know is how do we fundamentally change? How do we fundamentally get to a place where we are whole beings? So, I tried to find it a bunch of different ways that were all very disembodied, like, spending 40 hours a week reading books or whatever, to then slowly, progressively be brought more and more towards no, you have all this, but if it's not grounded in your body, you're not going to be able to ground it into the field and into the earth. So then all of a sudden the alchemist came, and then this other trauma therapist came, and then 2.5-year apprenticeship of ayahuasca came. And like all these moments came that brought me deeper and deeper into the body and deeper into the willingness to feel the deep existential terror. Cause like, that's it. That's what's underneath all our poopy. It's deep existential terror that we could be ripped to shreds, that whatever shame, whatever self-hate, whatever's going on deep in there that we can't even tap into, that if we even dip for 1 second our finger in there, poof, we will just be annihilated. So then it was just like a progressive, of course, plant medicine was really helped. I wouldn't do it anymore because once you have reclaimed your body, then it's what I would like to teach people is how to do it without needing to do these things. And it is possible. You just have to be willing to go into it and feel it and have a loving container that allows you to feel completely safe while you're doing it. And that's why, generally speaking, my mentorship is minimum 6 months. And some people have been with me for 5 years. And they have no intention of stopping. Because we just keep going deeper and deeper, and they feel safer and safer. We feel safer and safer as we shed one layer and shed another and shed another. And then we're getting closer and closer to that big ball of whatever that is on the bottom that we think is going to engulf us. Meanwhile, it's your essence and it will engulf you in a very good way, though. But in order to get to that, is the process of going through all these layers of pain.
Oh my gosh. I love that though. Like, just talking about how we're basically scared of ourselves.
Our light.
Yeah, our light. Right. Yeah. Of our power, of what we're actually meant to be doing here. And I think there's so many reasons why, between trauma and also society telling us, oh no, don't take up space. Like, don't be seen because that's scary. And, or if it's not scary, it's conceited or, but that's not true. I mean, the more I've learned is like the more you can be authentic to yourself and be in your essence, it's not the same thing as being conceited, because you're just in your light. You're just and from there you're able to project your light onto other people who have the option to go, oh wait, they can do that, maybe I can do that too, but you have to get to that place first.
That's a really good example of having the discernment of the voices of authority that have been internalized, right? Like we're at the point where we're kind of like, yeah, there's some big core wounds going on with the divine feminine and masculine energy, and like the fear of taking up too much room. That's definitely a divine feminine wound. That is the wound the divine feminine carries. I'm too much. I take up too much space. I want too much. But the reality is that feminine energy is expansive. And what masculine energy needs is for it is to create containers that allow all that energy to flood in. And when it starts overpouring, it means, hey, male energy, we need to destroy that structure you made and actually create a better one. But then the wound of the masculine energy is the fear of being destroyed and annihilated. So every time the structure he's built has become dysfunctional, for him, it feels like he will be annihilated and he is powerless. And so he does everything he can to constrict the feminine energy to stay in the container they made for it. Which is very eye-opening to realize that, right? So it's like, and we have both energies in us, right? So there's parts of us that are afraid of being annihilated and of being made powerless. And there are parts of us that are afraid of being squashed because we're too much, because we're being too much. But these are voices in your head. You know what I mean? Like from your parents or from your family. And this is another key thing, is understanding almost anything anyone has ever told you is about their own defense structures and what they don't allow themselves to be. This is so important to understand because people have a self-image. And whenever you show up in your pureness, it is a threat to their self-image. And whether or not they're your mom or a freaking stranger, people that have not done spiritual work, when their self-image is threatened, will lash out. Hurt people, right? Like we can understand that without meaning, oh, I have so much compassion for this person and I forgive them. It doesn't, whoa, these do not have to go. It's not, I understand, therefore I have to forgive them. An explanation is not an excuse, right? So by understanding, we can be like, okay, that's where this person's at. Their ego's affected by my presence because I'm not playing their freaking game. And their defense structure will attack me because it's trying to protect their crappy little self-image. I'm sorry to put it like that, but that's what it is, right? It's kind of like, I'm a great mother. I'm a great mother. So then if your child's like, Mom, I really need this, it's like, how dare you, because the the image, right? The egoic image just got, and so much of our trauma from childhood is that.
Yeah, that makes me think a lot of how I read the Hierophant card. And the way that I read that is it's about discernment. It's about peeling back programming and conditioning that was given to us by, like you said, society, family, everyone out there. And
Mm-hmm.
basically learning how to discern what's yours that you want to keep carrying and what you don't. And I always tell people whenever the Hierophant comes up, I'm always so excited for them because I know that they're either about to embark on a journey of self, governing, right? Or they're in the midst of it. And usually I always talk about that backlash. Like there's gonna be people who are gonna see you changing and seeing you letting go of these beliefs and values, and they're not gonna like it because they gave it to you for a reason in their mind. And
Mm.
but it's yeah, and I love too, you can have that compassion and still have a boundary and still be like, you know what, while this behavior is happening, you don't have space in my life. And that's okay too. You can have that protective measure. And so the thing that I've noticed too is I feel like once you decide to, how you want to be treated, how you want people to show up in your life, and you've done this work, it's a lot easier to not only set boundaries for those that don't understand and can't understand, and like you said, will attack you just for doing you, right, being yourself. But then there's also that part where you're going to attract people who are going to see you, who are going to want to help support you, and like so you'll naturally attract your tribe. And yeah, you might have to boundary up to people who have been in your life for your whole life, but if they're not adding to your life in a positive way and are trying to break you down for being yourself, there needs to be that protective measure too. And so I love that you mentioned that because it's important.
Not everyone wants to talk about their situation or life questions out loud, and that's okay. That's why my email tarot readings are a perfect fit for the inward seekers, the ones who feel deeply, process everything, and don't always have the words or the energy for a live session. Here's how it works. You send your question, I tune in, pull cards, and record a 17 to 25 minute voice message, channeling what comes through around your question and situation. You'll also receive a photo of the cards pulled, all delivered to your inbox within 24 hours. My intention is always to honor your journey with sincerity and heart-aligned guidance. If this feels like the kind of support you've been craving, let's connect. You can find me at the link below or at www.spiritjourneycollective.com.
Yeah. I had a mentor that used to say, Julie, you can have compassion for the tiger. It doesn't mean you let it eat you. And then another friend was like, yeah, and it doesn't mean you let it live in your house either. And I was like, woo, woo.
That is a great way to put it. Yeah, that is a really great way to put it. I mean, thankfully, I have done a lot of that boundary work. So those that are in my circle, they've earned their spot there, so to speak. But I know it was hard. I mean, I've lived in houses of people who, I had to basically escape from and go, oh, this is not good. And then I realized once I was able to set that boundary with them, then I was able to heal. Then I had the space to actually figure out, well, what do I believe and who am I? And, and it's funny when I look back, I know for a fact I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't close that door. It would not have happened because they would have been constantly shutting me down, and I would have questioned and second guessed myself, and I probably would have just not even bothered with the healing journey. But now I have this sense of like, I have a better understanding. I mean, I have a long way to go with my own healing for sure, but I definitely have a better understanding of, okay, who comes in my life, who doesn't. Oh, this is behavior that I've seen before. I don't want to see you on repeat. Okay, now I'm going to close the door. Like learning how to discern, I think, is one of the first steps to really creating that peace that we all deserve and need and all of that.
Of course. And then like another part of the discernment is really taking the time to notice like, okay, so I took people out of my life because X thing was going on. And then has there been a reproduction of that with someone else? Because like, the reality is however we were loved as children becomes, okay, that's normal, So like for me, without doing a lot of, man, I have been working on myself for 30 years, and like, I still tend to attract a certain kind of person in my life that constantly lets me see where I'm at with my healing of that dynamic. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like so many pieces in there, like the codependent, narcissistic, like the cluster B and the like all these things, the victim bully dynamics, the interrogator and the aloof, like all these dynamics that they fit together, right? And the way it stops fitting together is through us doing our healing. Right. And there's even something you said, like I like doing that with my students sometimes. It's like, make peace with the fact that 99% of what you're thinking isn't yours and is probably bullshit. That's a hard one to work with.
Yeah.
So then you're like, so then what is? Because like, it's most of what we think we are, all the stories we're carrying, blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's so much blah, blah. And when you really want to like tap into the core truth of yourself, when you really enter into the heart of your soul and your soul talks to you, it's like, I don't know, 3 words maybe. You know what I mean? Like, it's not thousands of years of civilizations and beliefs and this, and there's none of that shit going on in there.
Yeah.
And that could be super scary. And that could be like, really? It could be like, really? Or it could be like, really? It's the same thing. And that this is another beautiful thing to understand. Like there's these emotional spectrums. Excitement and anxiety are the same emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're just not the same place on the spectrum of fear and love, right? So fear on this side and truth on the other one. And it's like based on where you're at there, that emotion of like is either going to be like woo or ah, but it's the same emotion.
Oh my gosh, I just told my daughter that this morning because she has a talent show today. And so I was like, how do you feel about it? She said, I'm nervous or I'm scared or, and I said, did you know that being scared and excited is the same butterfly feeling? You just get to decide which butterflies are in your tummy, And so I don't know how much she took from that because she's only 9, but I was trying to tell her, like, when you feel scared, you can also turn it into excitement. When it's something, what is it? When it scares you and it excites you at the same time is probably for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like maybe at 9 is too young to talk about that. But like basically anything that scares us, anything that's as adults that scares us is because it's out of our comfort zone. And all the magic happens outside of it. So it's like, like I remember doing that once. That was a theme an entire month of my mentorship program. It was just understanding the difference between your contraction zone and your expansion zone and just toggling, literally like coming back into your contraction, your comfort zone, and just like, it's kind of like, and then going into the expansion zone and then feeling the fear while you're going into it. And then it's kind of like, oh, wow, there's a lot more room here. And then it's like, okay, now let's go back in the contraction zone. And then everyone's like, no, no, we don't want to. But it's like, yeah, we do want to go back because we want your discernment to get so fine-tuned that you know right away when you're going back in the comfort of the contraction zone.
Yeah.
But I don't think a 9-year-old, like I wouldn't put a 9-year-old through that, but for us, as adults, because the parts of us that feel afraid are children.
Yeah.
As adults, fear, real fear is in the moment. It's spleen generated. It's like, there's a tiger right there, or I'm just gonna burn my hand if I put it in the oven or whatever. Like, and then it's over. You look in the animal kingdom, that's what it looks like. Right? They're afraid of something, they run, they don't get eaten by the lion, they shake it off, it's over, they go back to eating the grass, and the lion's over there. They're not freaking out. They're not like, ugh. They're not having an anxiety attack about the lion being over there. But us, we loop and loop and loop that stuff in our heads. Like it's our mind that makes the fear linger so much longer. And then the fear lingers. And then we need to have more thoughts about it. And we need to understand why are we having it and where does it come from? And then, it's because of this and it's because of that. So now we've got all these reasons why we have the fear. None of that is helping to release it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all making it more and more contracted. Well, I was abused and I was this and I was that and then my past lives and my karma and my this. And now you're just all stuck in this contraction zone instead of like, and you can just decide to like transmute all that shit if you're willing to go feel it. Way below the language level, you know what I mean? Like way below linguistic levels of being, it's the pure raw feeling. You go and hang out with that. You don't try to talk with it, give it stories. You just hang out with it and you let it feel, I will be annihilated. I will die. I will this, I will that. And you're just like, I know, I got you, girl. I got you. Let's go. Let's do it. It's like, but. And you just don't leave and you don't let the stories kick in. If you can go through that, that's how permanent healing happens.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, because he talks about how our mind, which is where we spend most of our time listening to the stories and the perspectives and the, all the reasoning, like that's not us. That's our ego and that's our brain. And our brain is powerful. It's meant to be a tool, but most time we just put all of our reasoning there and all of our energy, like, okay, what's going on up here? But that's not who we are. And so when you can start observing your thoughts as like a separate thing than yourself, then you have that option to start figuring out, well, what's the difference between your thoughts and where's that soul, which is you, like starting to discern the difference. So at least understand there is a difference and enough to go back or not go back, but go inward. Right.
Yeah. So for like Tolle was a big part of my growth, like the first, it was one of the first spiritual teachers that I tapped into, his books and stuff like that. And it's so, his core message is so wonderful, because basically One of the things he explains about emotions that I want to talk about just quickly is that he explains how your emotions are your body's reaction to your thoughts. Okay. That's pretty powerful. So it's kind of like most of the time when you're having emotions, if you kind of like check in, what's going on in my head right now, you'll probably find the cause of that emotion. You know, so and then there's like the other raw emotions that are from the traumas that happened to you under 9 years old, you know, which are not coded with rational thinking and stuff like that. Like they're way deeper. But most of the emotions that people are experiencing in their daily lives are rehashing of the past or generated by the mind trying to explain away, not understanding what's going on at a deeper level, which is about these core emotions I was talking about. So either way, we're stuck in the world of ego. And for Tolle, like his moment of enlightenment, like for most of us, it's like a progressive process. For him, it was like a, you know, sometimes we get it like that. And then he spent like 2 years living on a park bench trying to write his book, basically. Like he was completely dysfunctional for almost 2 years. But the moment came when he was about to hang himself. He was unhappy. He, you know, like one of his university professors that he really, really looked up to, and for him was like, wow, committed suicide. And it was just like, oh my God, like what? Like all these things happen. And then he was at a place where he was about to commit suicide because he couldn't handle his pain body and being stuck in that ego anymore. And it's in that moment when he was about to do it that moment for him came one shot. It was like, who is the me that's having this horrible life? Like who is that? And in that moment, it's like the essence and the consciousness and the ego completely separated. And he had that moment of being able to look from his essence to the mental construction that was walking around acting like it was him. and he just saw it, and it was over. It's like that part just got hung. Like I'm not saying he's saying that, but that's basically what happened. That part died because the ego and all this story and all this blah blah about who you are and what happened to you and what they did and rah, 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 it can only survive if you think it's you.
Yeah, that's really powerful when you put it that way. And I do remember he did explain it happened to him like an instant. Everything changed for him. And yeah, I do remember him recalling sitting on a park bench and just basically in euphoria, trying to understand what the heck just happened to him. And
I don't even know. I don't even think he was trying to understand. That's still too mental. You know, he was just kind of
right. He was just present. Well, the whole book is about being present and about being in the moment without being up here, which is really hard because our mind does not like to shut up. But
so that reminds me, like what I do with my students is I have like a 3-step methodology that I use with them, and I call it multidimensional harmonization. And I call it like that because the idea is we want to harmonize the human side of us, which is the lower 3 chakras, and the divine side of us, which is the upper 3 chakras. And the way we harmonize them is by coming back to the heart. The name sounds way more complicated than it is. But basically in that process, it's like the 3 steps are you align the body-mind connection. So that means instead of being stuck in that chatter and feeling what it's doing in your body and thinking that proves that it's true, instead of being there, you notice what's going on in your mind. And then you know, okay, my mind is reacting. My mind is trying to find a solution to something. So my mind thinks there's a problem somewhere. What there is just an energy that needs us to go and meet it. So we leave the mind. We go, okay, my mind is freaking out. Thank you. Where is that in my body? Where is this actually going on in my body? And that's where we go. So like as soon as we start doing that, we start aligning the body-mind connection. Because like what the reality is, most of us are walking around like a big wobble head. You know, these little wobble things? That's what we look like energetically. We got these tiny little bodies and these big heads, you know, and we're like wobbling around, like trying to make sense of everything. And we're not taking the time to go in the body and feel where we're holding that. So the second you allow that to happen, like, oh, okay, where's in my body? It's like, okay, well, my left knee, my liver, I got tightness here. Okay, good. Now we got something to work with. Let's go hang out with that. If we're going to talk with something, we're going to talk with that. We're going to talk with the energy. And then, so that's like step number one is getting good at that. Like, my head's blah, blah, blah. That means I need to go take care of something in my body. Right there. It's a huge shutdown of like, no, I need to go read 16,000 books about it. No, I need to go do a PhD in psychology. No, I need to go do this. No, you need to feel. And then once we've accepted to go in and feel, our whole system starts trusting us that we're going to stop abandoning it all the time by hiding up in our heads. So that's, as soon as we start doing that, the heart naturally starts to open. It's the freakiest thing. It just happens naturally, because when you are sitting there listening to what's in your body, compassion kicks in, the desire to understand what that part of you is going through kicks in, and all of that, that's the heart opening up. That's the heart opening up. We listen with the heart, through the heart. And then you want to naturally help these parts come back into your heart. And the more you do that, so that's step two. So step one, align the body-mind connection. Step two, expand the heart space. And then from there, we've got a much more stable base. We've got 2 feet on the ground. We've got a body that hasn't been ignored or left anymore, right? Like, and then the heart is open, and then the soul can come in. The soul cannot come in when we're like, and then from there, the third step is we awaken the soul dimension more and more. So, and we can do that so easily in our lives any day in 10 minutes.
I've never heard that explanation of the 3 lower chakras being the mind and the 3 upper chakras being like the soul, and then the heart being the middle, but it makes so much sense. It's like the bridge. And,
It is.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, that just another little mind blown moment. I'm like, that makes so much sense. That really, really resonates. So when someone has asked me like, oh, where is that in your body? I have such a hard time understanding how to answer that. How would you go about tapping into where it is in your body?
Okay, so it's a lot easier to do when you have like someone working with you, right? Because like for me, for example, I work with claircognizance. So I get a download and I understand what's going on in the person. But I have a lot of clairsentience as well. So I feel in my body what's going on in their body. So the minute I'm in a session with someone, I'm amplifying. It's like almost like I'm like, this is the volume and let's jack it up. So the person, when they're working with me, they have a lot less difficulty because like their ego can't, I don't know how to explain this. Person's ego knows when they are in front of someone that their shit's not going to fly with. Kids are like that too. Yeah, you can see that. Like a kid knows that I can get away with getting candy from mommy, but I can't do that with dad. It's not going to work. It's kind of the same idea, right? Like when you work with someone that has a powerful field and a strong spiritual bullshit meter, it's like, not only can they tell what's the blah, blah in your head that's trying to keep you away from actually going there, but they can feel where it is in your body. So if I'm working with someone and they're like, I don't know, I'm like, oh, second rib on the left over there under the kidney, no. And they're like, well, now that you mention it. Yeah. And then because it's normal, we have a defense structure that's telling us, I will die if I feel that. Of course, there's resistance to feeling it. Of course.
Yeah. And I think that that's part of this spiritual journey is going through different ego deaths, but that's the last thing the ego wants, right? The ego's like, no, you need me. I need to be here. But, you have to release it to a point in order to actually get there. So.
Yes. And that's such an interesting thing to go into, because the reality is that the pain pushes until the vision pulls, right? So the pain that you are in pushes the ego to try to go get help and answers to relieve the pain. What it can't understand is that the relief of the pain comes through the dissolution of it. But by the time the momentum is strong enough and the ego realizes that it is participating to the process that will undo it, by that time, generally speaking, it's too late for the ego to wind you back and then the vision pulls. Then your soul is able to just kind of like, come on, let's go, and then you kind of like, whoa, and it's really important to understand that it's one of the most important pieces of grieving that we need to do, is that the part of you that wants the healing isn't the part that's ever going to receive it. That's a hard one to swallow, because like the part of you that wants isn't the part that's going to get it. The part that wants will die in the process. And then you get, how can I say this? It's like the caterpillar and the butterfly, right? The caterpillar is not going to get to know consciously through its own perspective what it's like to be the butterfly. It's not.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's also making me think of Matrix, when the red or the blue pill, right? It's like it's a completely different thing. You can't rationalize it in the space you're in now, and when you get to the other side, that the way you would have rationalized is completely different and gone.
Yeah. But there's so much freedom. Like, it's like you get to a place where you're like, I don't know how to explain it, but like you're kind of like, well, thank God, rejoice that that's not the part that's gonna get it, because it would like hold on to it. It's like, imagine like a hurt inner child that's like, I just need candy. I need candy. And then like you give it candy, you think it's going to stop wanting candy after that? No, it's not going to stop wanting candy. That energy is, I want candy.
Right.
That it's not going to heal out of being that.
It's just like what you said too. Now I remember what I was going to comment on. It's I'm going to go and read all the books, get more and more information, when eventually you have to take action and do something with that information. It's that same thing. It's like the ego would rather just keep reading all the books, and the soul's like, okay, what are you going to do with that information? Because the reading isn't going to actually do the changing and the metamorphosis in you, right? Like, you have to actually now do what you're learning about.
Yeah. And that's a huge piece of like, even, but it's still important to have cognitive understanding, right? So it's kind of, but understanding that there's a place for all that. Your ability to understand what's going on really helps you go through it. It doesn't make you go through it, but it helps you. You're kind of like, oh, I feel like I'm dying. Okay, I'm having an ego death. Okay, this is a good sign. It means I'm spiritually evolving.
Right.
If you didn't know that, you'd just be like, I'm fucking dying. You'd be freaking out. So that cognitive understanding is a huge piece to allow us to feel safe when we go through the process. But then we need to do the work. Right? Then we need to do whatever it is, the grief work, the feeling, the energetic expansion, the energy healing, whatever it is we're doing. So it's like we give the mind a bone to chew on. That's the way I talk about it in my program. I'm like, for half an hour, I'm going to give you all these funky, amazing theories. I'm going to explain to you a bunch of stuff about how healing happens. And then your brain's like, wow, that was awesome. Okay, enough information now. And then it's not going to interfere. And then I go in a 1 hour long process, guided meditation, activation, tapping into things, healing some stuff. And then we kind of talk it out a little bit after, so it's like the perfect setup, right? It's like, let's give your ego some stuff so that it leaves us alone. Cause then it's tired. I've given it too much information, and it's like, okay, stop. It gets out of the way. And then we get to work with the body and the emotional body and the consciousness and the soul. And then at the end, it's kind of like, okay, we integrate a little bit, allowing the ego to come back in and share how it feels about what just happened.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see how that kind of builds upon each other, right? And so I'm just looking at the time. We do need to start winding down, as much as I love talking to you, and I'm just getting so much wisdom from this conversation. So I'd like to go to like what I like to call synchronicity story time. And so this is kind of like, I feel like a lot of our conversation in general has kind of been like a giant synchronicity, but do you have any stories where, things just happened or lined up, or you can't, positive paranormal story, anything like that you could share?
Absolutely. Too many of them. I should have thought about this a little bit in advance, because there's too many ideas coming in at once. One of the, it's not a very fun example, but it's a good one, because it's still about that whole way that the information works through me. Is when I was in South America, I was traveling with my son. He was 4 years old, and we backpacked for 6 months in South America. Okay. And 3 months into the trip, I was starting to get exhausted, normal. And I had this moment where I was like, I need to stop moving. I need to stop moving. I need a 1 week break of being full-time mom alone with my kid. And I would love to watch some TV. That would be awesome. And so I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I'm a bit of a frustration moment, right? I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I need a week off of this trip. I need a week off of my kid. I need to just watch TV and lay in a bed or something. And at the same time, it was like, and when I come back to Canada, I need to know where the money situation, how we're going to do this, because he needs to start school and I have no idea what kind of funds we're going to have to go forward with this. So all this happens in like this little micro minute of being in a bus driving to Lake Titicaca. And then we get out of the bus and we're getting out of the bus just so that the bus can go on this little boat and cross the lake so that we can keep going after, kind of thing. So there's 60 people on this freaking bus. Everyone gets off the bus. I get off the bus, I fall and I break my foot. And there's no hospital. There's nothing. There's just people picking me up and putting me back in the bus and then put over the water and then another hour and a half in the bus before we get to the little village where there's no hospital or crutches or anything. But long story short, in that moment, I was like, this is everything I would want. And that happens. Boom. Well, my God, I spent a week in the hospital. The people I was traveling with took care of my son. I got to watch TV. I spent my birthday evening in there doing tarot cards and trying to figure out, do I go back to Canada? What should I do? What should I do? It's like, oh man, I wish I could just let go and just almost like smoke a joint or something and let go or whatever. And I started crying and the nurses came in and they thought I was in pain from the operation. And they just put some freaking morphine in my thing. And next thing you know, it's my birthday. And I'm like alone in a room, watching TV, relaxing, little break from my son. I'm like, okay, holy shit. I think I kind of asked for this, and I'm really enjoying this. I'm not like sad about this at all. And on top of that, because I'm Canadian and that happened when I was coming out of a bus, I ended up getting 3 years of funding while my foot was healing, which allowed me to put my son through school, which allowed me to get a house when we got back to Canada. It's like everything in that little second set up 4 years of my life of everything I was asking for. I want to use that as an example because often we're like, oh, that's so horrible. And it's like, no, man, that was a gift disguised as a disaster.
Oh my gosh, that gave me chills. Because yeah, it was. Well, first of all, ask and you shall receive. It's kind of a perfect example of it. But you didn't get it, obviously, how you wanted it when you asked for it, right? And I feel like that happens a lot. I mean, even with the guests I have on, there's usually some catalyst that completely changes their life. And in the moment, it feels like chaos and it feels like everything's crumbling. And then on the other side of it, they're like, well, actually, this is way better. And this is really what I've been looking for, searching for. But they didn't know it. And there's usually like this period of like resisting it first. And then it sounds like for you, you kind of, you had an easier time leaning into it versus resisting. And I think that kind of helped probably, I'd imagine.
Because at that point, I was just like, I was already a good 10 years into the alchemy work and all that. So I was like,
okay,
I know it's a cosmic joke. At this point, I know it's a cosmic joke. I know this is a gift disguised as a disaster, and I'm not going to freak out about it because even then I could have just freaked out and went back to Canada in the middle of the winter with a broken foot. What would be the use in doing that? I was like, I'm not ending my 3-month trip. No way. There's 3 months left of this trip. We're going to do it. I don't know how, but we're going to do it. And we ended up having a completely different trip. We went to live with a family in Peru. My son went to kindergarten in Spanish. He walked out of there. He was like, Spanish kid talking super fast. I got to make some really good friends. I became I got brought into a family so much that the grandmother would come up in the morning and tell me everything I was doing wrong. At that point, they had a party for me because they were like, you are now part of the family. The grandmother comes up to see you. So all these incredible memories, and my son would have never had a chance to go to a kindergarten. He would have never had a chance to build a friendship that deep with Franco, if that hadn't happened. And honestly, even if God would have been like, hey, you got to stop moving now and take a break. Let these people you just met take care of your kid for a week. I would have never done that. You know what I mean? Like, so life's kind of like, okay, these are the barriers. Okay, so let's pinch. There you go. Took care of that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's that, yeah, and they say, like, the spiritual teachers will say it's the path of least resistance, and that's kind of a perfect example of just like leaning into what's happening. Like, okay, I'm not going to fight it. This is what's happening. Let's see what's going to come from it, and trusting the process. So, yeah, wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that a lot of people can actually relate to that, and maybe even make them question, like, if they're going through a chaos right now, like, question, like, do I want to resist it or lean into it? Because maybe I'm supposed to be, leaning into it instead of fighting it. And maybe it'll take me to where I need to go next.
Yes,
So
anytime. Yes, anytime. That's the only true solution. You can resist it and suffer, or you can lean into it and go feel what's going on in there, and then potentially expand the zone, right? Because that's the goal of all suffering, is to make you expand the zone of what you allow in your life. And it's like, sure, it'd be great if we didn't have to suffer, but we're very terco. We're pig-headed, like we stubborn. We're very stubborn. Egos are stubborn. So it's like, what do you need? Even in physics, they talk about that, like second law of physics, whatever, university stuff. I don't really remember. You cannot change the direction of something unless something hits it at a that's coming faster, or else it'll just that's like, hey, maybe you should do this, and it changes nothing, But if you're like this, and I'm gonna, okay, now I'm listening. Hopefully the person's listening.
I've heard a lot of guests call that the spiritual 2x4 that comes flying out of nowhere.
It's a good name. I think it's like, it's full of love. It's still full of love,
Right. Oh, always. Yeah. It's that and it's so hard to remember this in the actual moment when you're going through it, but that it's remembering that everything's happening for you, not to you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
yeah.
I try to remember that often. I'm not always the greatest at it in the moment, but then eventually it catches up with me where I'm like, oh wait, hold on. Why is this happening? There's a reason this is happening for me, not to me. I'm not a victim in this. This is a gift from the universe. I don't know why my alternator going out is a gift from the universe, but apparently it's a gift from the universe, and I need to, lean into it instead of resist it. So, just as an example, you know what I mean? So it's like, I love that example so much.
And another really good sentence for that is, what's in the way is the way.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah.
It's like, if only I could get that out of the way, then I could go there. It's like, no, you don't understand. That is the way.
Right. Oh, that just gave me chills. I love that too. Okay. So, God, I really, really enjoyed talking to you. I really enjoy all the wisdom you keep bringing up and everything. But yeah, we've gone over the hour now, so we have to start winding it back. How can our listeners find you if they want to work with you and follow you and all of that?
Sure. So I don't do a lot of social media, so it's kind of hard to follow me, but I have a YouTube channel, and what I do on that, and I don't post a lot on it right now because I'm transitioning. I've finished a 5-year spiritual mentorship program. And I'm slowly birthing the next one, which will be called How Healing Happens. And it's going to be with like hands-on healing examples going in with the group. But until then, what I have on my YouTube channel is I have the cognitive part of each of my mentorship calls for free on my channel. So to understand about healing, everything we talked about today, it's the kind of things that you'll find on my YouTube channel. And it's called Julie Claire Joyful Soul Expansion. Easy peasy. My website is joyfulsoulexpansion.com. And these are the two main ways to reach me. And my passion really is bringing people into their spiritual awakening in a way that they understand what's going on as best as possible, and also understand that we need to go actually feel to do the work. So some people, they come on for 5 packs of a session of 5 packs, and other people come on for an entire year at a time. So, and we have a lot of fun, but it's very small groups. I keep it very small.
Perfect. Well, I will be sure to put all that in the show notes so they can find you if they want to work with you. And thank you again for joining me today. I'm gonna really enjoy editing this. I already know it. I'm gonna be like taking notes as I do it too.
Well, yeah, if you start watching the YouTube videos, you might be like, you might start taking a lot of notes too, because that's what it is, right? It's like my big academic brain, 15 years of high academics and PhD stuff. So I know how to break things down into much easier to understand pieces. And then from there, we actually have fun doing the work. So of course, all the meditations and the activations from the mentorship program are also available on my website as online courses, which are, way cheaper than working with me one-on-one. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again for joining me today. This has been wonderful.
You're super welcome.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you're wanting more, consider joining our free Facebook community called Spirit Journey Collective, your haven for spiritual exploration and personal growth. Dive into a supportive community where sharing spiritual experiences is encouraged. Unlock the power of intuition, embark on a journey of self-discovery, and connect with like-minded souls. If this sounds like a community you'd love to plug into, the link is in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.